Kalamata's Kitchen is a brand that seeks to introduce children to the world and diverse cultures through adventures with food. Food is what unites everybody. Everybody eats. We do try to teach kids through a character called Kalamata. She experiences the world on these adventures with her sidekick, an alligator pal named Al Dente, who gets into a lot of mischief.
They were very into Al Dente.
There's all these ways for parents to trick their kids into eating something, all these like different methods, but there was nothing that seemed to really speak from the child's perspective. And so my business partner, Derek Wallace, actually had the idea to create this character. He's a father, and he wanted to find a way to connect with his son through the things that he loves to do. Derek loves to eat, Derek loves to travel. That's actually why we became friends. When he came to me with the idea for it, I was like, yes, I love this. I grew up in a household where everything we did was centered around food. I saw an opportunity to share a lot of what made my own childhood really magical with other people.
Being a mom is the toughest job there is, and it doesn't come with instructions. So it's okay if you don't have all the answers. We'll figure it out together. This is Mom Brain with Ilaria Baldwin and Daphne Oz.
I am Sarah Thomas. I am the co-founder of Kalamata's Kitchen and the author of our book series. And I'm also a sommelier at Bernardin. And I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so I have a very interesting story, guys. So I met this woman, this is where we're going to start. So there's this juice bar. When we go stay in LA, usually always working, we always stay at the Beverly Wilshire, which is really nice. It's in Beverly Hills, and for New Yorkers, it's great because it's a very walkable part, and you can find your Starbucks, and you can find your Rite Aid, and you can find your gym, and the kids have their playground nearby. And for Alec and I who are working a lot, it makes everybody's life easier that the kids don't have to get in a car all the time to go everywhere. So there's this juice bar around the corner from the hotel called Creation with a K. And it's delicious and it's amazing. And we get so excited to go there. And, every single day, as you guys have probably heard in the past, I make my children drink a smoothie because I can blend all the things that I want them to eat and won't eat into the smoothie. You guys might also know that I have a very picky eater. So I have 4 children. But the second one, my first son, is a very picky eater to the point where it can bring tears. And it's nothing that is very concerning. He just had his 4-year-old checkup yesterday because he just turned 4 2 days ago. And I brought him in, and he hasn't changed weight in the past 3 months, but the doctor says he's extremely healthy. And the things that he won't eat that many things, but the things that he does eat are she's like, you have nothing to worry about. I'm complaining that he's just eating oatmeal and tofu and greens juice. And she's like, you're fine.
Could be worse.
You're fine. At least he's getting all the important things. She'll have people come in and they are only eating, grilled cheese and macaroni and cheese and pizza and stuff like that. Interestingly, he won't touch any of those things. I'll tempt him with things that aren't good for you. I'm like, maybe he'll try this just because I want him to try something different. And he's like, no, I am not going to touch that. So literally the night before I met Sarah, I am, frustrated about something. And in my head, I'm like, please, somebody needs to teach me, come into my life. I literally think I conjured you up. I feel like you didn't exist the day before I met you. And I was just begging for some sort of solution. So fast forward to I am in that juice bar with, I believe 2 of my children were there. And I am getting them a smoothie, and Sarah comes up to me and she said, can I give your children a book? And I looked at my children. I said, do you guys want a book? And of course they said yes, because what child would not want a book? And she handed my daughter a book of Kalamata's Kitchen, which is your book. And then she explained to me that you work with children who should try new foods and maybe picky eaters, and sort of encouraging children to branch out and try different things. And I immediately heard angels singing from above and the clouds parted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I should ask for more things in life, because look who just showed up less than 24 hours after I made this prayer to, whoever is above. And so we then you had more than one book. You gave me your card. You told me a little bit about what you did, but I just had this like great energy from me. And I was like, oh my God, this woman is fabulous. And we go across the street and we have breakfast. And during breakfast, to entertain them, we read the Kalamata's Kitchen books to them. So that's what happened right after we met. And then I looked online and I realized I'm going to let you say, because you're going to say it better than I do. But I found out that you have these events and you do different things for kids who are picky eaters. And you're in New York. So it was like all of these like amazing coincidences come together. We met in Beverly Hills, yet we are both returning to New York. And so now please tell me what you do.
I will say, I'll start off by saying it was extremely serendipitous.
It was weird. It was a weird moment.
It was a lovely moment, though. It's just, it felt right. A lot of what we've done so far has felt really just serendipitous and really good and really natural. And I think that that's because Kalamata's Kitchen is a brand that seeks to introduce children to the world and through diverse cultures, through adventures with food. Food is what unites everybody. Everybody eats. We all have a story to tell about it, and we all have strong emotions about it. Some people really dislike it sometimes. Some people really love it. And at the end of the day, there's building blocks through food that can help people learn a lot of lessons. And so, yes, we do try to teach kids through a character called Kalamata. She experiences the world on these adventures with her sidekick, an alligator pal named Al Dente, who gets into a lot of mischief.
They were very into Al Dente.
Al Dente.
Although they all had ideas of like what kind of animal it was, and one said an alligator, and the other one was like, no, it's a dinosaur.
That's fine. You know, Al can be many. Al literally wears many hats, and our illustrator has drawn him in many hats. But at the end of the day, like we sort of looked out at the food world and thought there's all these ways for parents to like trick their kids into eating something or try to, fool them into trying this and all these like different methods. But there was nothing that seemed to really speak from the child's perspective. And so my business partner, Derek Wallace, actually had the idea to create this character and a brand around this character to get children to organically love experiencing the world through food, because Kalamata loves experiencing the world through food, and he did that out of a genuine need. He's a father, and he wanted to find a way to connect with his son through the things that he loves to do. Derek loves to eat. Derek loves to travel. That's actually why we became friends. And when he came to me with the idea for it, I was like, yes, I love this. I grew up in a household where all we did was, like, everything we did was centered around food. And I saw an opportunity to share a lot of what made my own childhood really magical with other people and maybe achieve something along the way.
Now, you are a sommelier.
Yes.
Which is a wine professional.
Yes.
And at a very fancy restaurant in New York.
Yes.
What brought you from wine to wanting to teach little kids to try more foods?
Well, it's funny. It's not, what I do at the restaurant is not so different from what I'm trying to do for kids. Essentially, I of course, I deal with wine at the restaurant, but essentially I'm just trying to curate experiences for people. I try to guide people based on what they know and what they like into the best possible experience that they can have at the restaurant. And oftentimes, it's funny, people always talk about picky eaters as children, but adults are way more stuck in their ways about what they like and don't like to eat. And a lot of my favorite guests are people who are like, okay, this is what I like. I may be willing to venture out to try something different. And I get to be the one to sort of hold their hands and like introduce them to something new. And that's the fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to do with adults. It's a really fun thing to do with kids, and it's also really necessary. And so it was a pretty natural transition. I'm not a parent myself, but I was a kid who got to experience the world through food, and I that joy that I felt when I was a kid and all my very strong memories, they have translated through my life to an extreme point, right? Like I made it my career to taste and smell. And again, I feel like there was a very natural fit when Derek brought this idea to me to be able to sort of expand it. And every parent I know has this like arsenal of tools that they have to use to get their kids to eat at all, let alone eat healthy.
Right.
And this is just another tool, right? Like it's something based on, I was, I guess, a success story of like a kid who would eat anything. It's just a tool offered from that perspective for parents to maybe try and use with their own children.
Well, it is, extremely stressful to have a child that just won't try things and will
I'm
cry and scream about it. I mean, I feel like most people out there, I'm somebody who had an eating disorder from when I was about 5 until I was 25. I was anorexic, bulimic, going through different, waves of it during those 20 years. And I got to a place of being able to, I believe, cure it. I mean, I eat I eat very smart. I want to eat things that are going to make my body strong, but I'm also at this amazing place in my life where I can try other things that I would never have tried because I would have been afraid before. And you really get to enjoy it in a way where I'm not going to feel terrible the next day because it really wasn't very good for me, but just be able to, try a little bit and savor that experience and have food be fun. But I feel like, I share that because I feel like most people have some issue with food. And I think a lot of that, raising 4 children, and obviously my children are very little, but we're like really in it right now, but raising them till the age of 5 is just my oldest one, is there's so many challenges around the dinner table. What to eat, how much to eat. Are you going to sit down? Are you the kind of family that says clean your plate? Are you the kind of family that it doesn't want to say that and then your child wakes up in the middle of the night and is hungry? It's so complicated to feed a child, and we obsess about it and obsess about it and obsess about it because we want them to be okay.
Of course.
But during that process, due to our own stresses, we can sometimes make it worse. And we can behave in ways as parents, behave in ways that is too aggressive or not guiding enough. I have people always say, "Oh, he'll grow out of it. He'll grow out of it," and he might. But I have a handful of adult friends who are so, as you say, stuck in their ways and will eat like 7 things. And it really is a disservice to them because it's very unhealthy. Just to eat pizza and macaroni and cheese is not a way to have your body exist in the world. And you're missing out on so much fun. As you say, food is fun. So I'm trying, hopefully successfully one day, right now I'm not so sure, to guide Raphael into this path of, encouraging him without being too forceful to eat different things, making sure that he eats enough. When he is the kind of child of if I don't see food I like, I just won't eat. I literally will just not eat. And then, making sure that he's getting the right nutrients that he needs. Again, we've been lucky enough that he is eating all of the important food groups. And, he's totally fine in terms of the weight spectrum and stuff like that. But I just, I want to see him really enjoy it and have fun. And he does enjoy food that he will choose. So what are different tools that we can use with our picky eaters?
Well, you brought up just so many interesting things about your child, and I think that's probably obviously very relatable to a lot of people who have children that are picky eaters. And I think that one thing that we have found through our tasting events, through just, feedback from parents that have interacted with the brand, is that the idea is that children have to, as you said, when he chooses his own food, he will eat it. Children have to feel some sort of agency over the decisions that they make. And that's why we wanted to translate the lessons as they were through stories, because kids can smell a lesson coming from a mile away. And it's just like, no, thank you, I'm done with this. But when it's organically translated through a story that they like, through a character that they like, oftentimes they just espouse the lesson themselves. And one example I give about the stories doing that and why the stories are an interesting tool for parents is in our first book, Kalamata makes a marangata cake, right? It's a pound cake with meringue frosting on it. And there's all these funny illustrations of Al wearing a fluffy frosting hat. And when I wrote it and we put it out there, I was like, well, I don't know, this isn't exactly healthy eating, but it's fun. And I was like, oh, kids are just going to want to eat meringue frosting, I guess. That's kind of fun. And the one part of that book that every kid who sees it loves the most is the illustration of Kalamata eating a guava. Because the chef says when they were kids, they always had fruit with their dessert. And I had no idea that was going to be the thing that people really caught on to, but it has been. And so many people have told us, I'm an adult and I've never had a guava in my life, and now I have to like go to the grocery store and go find a guava
must
for
know
my
what
kid.
that is.
I have to know. My kid has to know.
That's so funny.
And then it becomes this sort of fun scavenger hunt when you're in the grocery store, because if Kalamata would try a guava, what's another fun fruit that she might try? And so, but that all comes from the kid. They feel a sense of adventure because they're inspired by something that this character that they love did.
And that's really, I mean, the sense of power is extremely important in all different aspects of, child rearing, but very much so when it is, has to do with what you put in your body. And I think that's one of the reasons that for me I developed an eating disorder so young is like, okay, this is something I can control. What I put in my body, what I don't put in my body.
Right.
And it ends up being more about the fight than about anything else. We had Jill Castle, a nutritionist, on our podcast, and we spoke about different things that we can do around the dinner table. And I have started doing some of those, and it really has helped. So one of the things is serve family style. Don't plate the food, and they can plate the food. And obviously you're watching when they're very little to make sure that they're actually eating, because, we do have to do some parenting. We can't be like, oh, sure, you can do it. And that helps a lot. Number one, the kids feel like it's fancy. It's like, oh my God, it's a party every single night. I don't know why they think it's a party, but there's all these like different options. Another thing is she said that kids have to try foods sometimes 50 times in order to like it, and cook it in many different ways. If it's, she talked a lot about broccoli because she says people obsess about broccoli for some reason, but she's like, make broccoli soup, make roasted broccoli, make, raw broccoli, make this broccoli, that broccoli. And again and again and again, start having them try it. And I feel like that, our thing now, this is what I also want to get into. So my thing is he has to lick it. Like if you won't eat it, you just have to lick it. But you say you have to try it twice.
Yes.
So talk away. Is it called the Kalamata Pledge?
We have our Taste Bud Pledge.
Taste Bud Pledge.
Which our taste buds are all of everybody who's involved in our community. We call our taste buds.
So cute.
Yeah, and kids love it. And we give little membership cards to kids who take the pledge. And that's another tool, I suppose, is this pledge itself, which is I promise to keep my mind open and my fork ready to try each new food at least 2 times and share what's on my plate when someone doesn't have enough. Kids, we ask them to like sign their name to it, and they get to carry around their membership card that says this. And we've found also that kids just really like the sense of community, right? Like they feel like if they've said this pledge, they're part of Kalamata's team. And a lot, I've witnessed kids really taking it to heart, which is so, like, I tear up all the time at our events because I'll have parents come up to me and be like, my kid only eats beige food. And then I'll be like, oh, which one's your kid? And we turn around and the kid's chugging beet juice in the corner. And it's because it's a couple things, right? They've taken the pledge. They've committed to doing this thing that their friend Kalamata does. We give them a stamp every time they try a food, try it twice. We tell them, you don't have to like it. It's okay if you don't like it. The important thing is the experience of trying it. And a lot of times what she said was right. Like, it might take a kid 50 times to do it, to like something. But that's okay too. Like it's all right as long as they have the idea of the experience of trying it. It's more important than the food itself in a lot of ways, because maybe they don't like that specific thing, but this idea of trying things twice is somewhere in their heads now, and it becomes a fun thing to do. And with the stamp, with Kalamata's pledge, with their cards, it becomes an affirmative thing to do as well. So that's another really great tool that we have, is just making kids feel like affirmed whenever they do make these decisions for themselves, whether they actually eat the food or not.
So talk me through an event.
Sure. I love our events. They're really fun. We've done them in a couple different formats, but generally always we have a passport, a food adventure passport, and a VIP badge that we hand out to all the kids. So as soon as they walk in the door, kids know that this is all about them. This event is for them. They are the stars of the show. Then we have food stations set up all around whatever venue we're in. And sometimes they're manned by the chefs who made the food. Sometimes we're in a market and, they're tasting directly from vendors. But everybody has one Kalamata approved bite that they hand out. And those bites are listed in the passports. And as kids walk around.
That's very smart, because sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, Rafa, take a bite," and he'll like take like a little crumb with like a tooth, and I'm like, "You didn't try it.
Didn't try it. Doesn't count." No, it's just one bite.
Yeah.
So it's so that like they kind of have to have the whole thing. It's like
Shove
kind
the
of
whole thing in
impossible
your
not to. Yeah. And so that they go around, and there's different vendors, and the different chefs will like explain what the bite is. Oftentimes they're things that like I've never even had before, but they're just it's fun. They make them look cool. And we tell them, if you taste this, we're going to stamp your passport. And you have a surprise if you complete your passport. If you get a full passport stamped, we got something special for you. And so they try it. They try stuff. They don't like everything. That's fine. But the important thing is that they try it, and they're excited to tell their parents that they tried it. And they're excited to show them their stamps and their full passports. And so at the end of it, we ask them to take the pledge if they liked what they did. And then we give them a bunch of temporary tattoos, which, everybody loves the al dente tattoos.
Anything that's a temporary tattoo or a sticker that's like
stamps,
very
stickers,
valuable.
tattoos.
Yes,
very valuable. They want to keep them. They're theirs.
Are these all in New York, these events?
We only had like a mini launch party for our third book in New York. Actually, all of the other ones have been elsewhere. We launched our first book. We wanted to launch in food communities first, places where we knew that there was a strong food sensibility, a strong sense of community, and a network of restaurants and chefs that we wanted to partner with, and that liked our idea and wanted families to come in and eat at their restaurants. And so we started in Portland, Maine, and actually like a week before we launched in Portland, Maine, it was announced as Bon Appetit's like Food City of the Year. It was, again, serendipitous, like you wouldn't believe. And then we had this, our first event there. Second one we did in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from. And then we did a couple in D.C. And one in Columbus in the North Market, which was like, I mean, I probably shouldn't pick a favorite, but it was my favorite.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I love food markets. Like, I love going to markets and just like walking around and tasting things, and I get really excited about it. So I was like, oh man, like if I had a kid, I would want them to be excited about going to markets, but I can see how it could be like difficult and overwhelming for a parent to be like, why would I take my kid to this place with like all the stimulation? And like I can see how.
I think it depends. Maybe I wouldn't bring all four of mine, but like one at a time I could do.
But I can, I could see. I was like, maybe if we give people an opportunity to see how this could be really fun, and like give them a little tool to make it fun, everybody will be excited about it, the parents and the kids. That really lives at the heart of the brand here, is that this is all about communication. It's all about bonding time. It's about making the most of every food experience you have, whether that's shopping, whether that's cooking at home, eating takeout at home, eating a regular meal at home, going out to a restaurant. We're trying to make people see that there's a wealth of opportunity to interact with food and the food world in everything that you do in your daily lives.
And you probably could, I'm trying to think here and be creative, because, of course, I'm dying. If you have one anywhere near me, I am going to drop absolutely everything bring at least Rafa there, but I would love to bring a couple of my kids.
You're all welcome.
Thank you. But I'm trying to think about these different things that people could do at home. And is there a way that, of course, get the books, which are amazing.
Thank you.
I'm telling you guys, we sat, and bringing kids to a restaurant is like not my favorite thing. We'll bring 4 kids to a restaurant is not my favorite thing. 1 or 2 is okay, but the 4 kids, it's pretty crazy, especially because the younger 2 are so young. And they just want to like run around and scream and stuff like that, and then you get dirty looks from other people. And I don't want to be that person who's just like putting an iPad out, because I want them to be present for the food. So we read those books there, and they were just like enchanted with the books. They're so well done. So very, very good books. So things that people can do at home. You can get the books and you can talk about things. But is there a way that you could bring, these taste buds, this Kalamata's pledge into your own home, and maybe with different things that you're trying? Like what are some tools that parents can use in their homes if they will not be able to make it to an event?
Well, other than the stories and I think like getting kids familiar with the idea behind Kalamata and what she stands for, if in the third book, for example, I think it's one of the best tools, I suppose, that parents could have is there's the story of what Eric Ripert did with his son Adrian when he was growing up, which was every weekend they would pick a new place. They'd have a map, and he'd let Adrian pick a country on the map, and he'd say, all right, where are we going today? And Adrian would say, all right, we're going to China, or we're going to France, or we're whatever. And he'd say, what do they eat in France, Dad? Or what do they eat in China? And Chef Ripert would say, they eat this, and they eat tomatoes with basil and whatever. And basically they would talk through the idea for a dinner. He would assign Adrian a task, some sort of prep thing or making the menus, and then he would cook, and then they would talk about it. And so, like, it was just it's unreasonable to expect that people could do that kind of thing every single day. But it's one element of, again, asking your children questions, getting them excited about the things that they're going to be consuming, to make them more thoughtful about everything that they're consuming, because that comes down to not just the actual food that they're eating, but knowledge about other countries, about cultures, about just stories of people that make everything more interesting to a kid. And I feel like I grew up learning a lot about the world because of what my parents would tell me about what I was eating. And they didn't have Kalamata's Kitchen. They just kind of did that because that's how they grew up too. And I think that seizing the opportunity to tell stories is a really, really easy way that's fun for everybody to get kids interested in eating and in learning about the world.
Well, it makes it not just more interesting, but it gives them some context. I mean, everybody always loves saying, oh, okay, be like Popeye, eat your spinach, and, make sure that you do this to make you stronger and stuff like that. And yes, all of these things are good. But I think, bringing in awareness of the world, bringing in, awareness of that, just that it's different and can be fun. Because kids who are picky eaters, I think it's for a whole, myriad of different reasons that they have. But, like, a lot of it is just fear. Or it's like, oh, this isn't fun. Like, no, I don't want to have dinner. I don't want to have dinner.
Yeah.
Because they dread that. And to bring some light in it, to make it fun. I love your idea. I think I'm going to start doing that, actually, about the different places in the world. Because, I mean, I'm pretty creative, and I'll create different meals when I cook for my children almost every single night. But I love that idea of being like, okay, today we're going to have a Chinese recipe, and then, tomorrow we're going to go to Ethiopia, and then we're going to go to India, and they can try all of these different things. Because I really do feel like, the palate is a muscle, and it must be exercised.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because, like, a lot of times I think parents will try a couple things and then just assume, like, if they're not going to eat it, it's never going to happen.
You're tired.
Of course.
You worked all day.
You have so much other stuff to do.
You buy this food that isn't cheap, and then you cook it, and then your child is like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah. And I think that, it's a very understandable problem. Mm-hmm. It's a very understandable problem. And, I think that, like, remembering that at a certain time, like you said, like, kids might have a fear about trying something or whatever, but I think remembering that at one point, every single thing that a kid tried was new.
Right.
And so treating everything as equally other is something that I like to say is I think another valuable tool. Is like, at one point, an apple was as foreign as an avocado. Mm-hmm. Oatmeal was as foreign as dal, which is something that Indian kids grow up eating all the time. And I think from a parent perspective or an adult perspective, if you try and frame things as equally other, it's another, like, way to just get kids to see things from a different angle, maybe. And I think that's part of it, right? Is like sometimes they build up their own mental roadblocks on things, and you might just have to flip the script a little.
Right.
I am not doing that from, like, my own experience. That's something that, like, my absolutely brilliant partner does with his kid. Mm-hmm. Like, when he's trying to get him to eat something different, he might call it something different, but it's not a trick.
Right.
It's just a different way of flipping the script. And I think that's also important. You don't want to trick your kids.
I know that's the trick, but that's the tricky thing. So let me tell you about tricking, because I was very much of that. I was like, I am going to be that kind of parent that's going to be like, here is a stalk of broccoli, and my child's going to be like, oh, thank you, Mommy, and they're going to cut it up nicely and eat it just as is.
Oh, I never did that.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't work. And then at the end of the day, you're like, all right, well, my kid needs to eat vegetables. And I'm, no matter how many times I put the broccoli on the plate or put the peas or the kale or whatever it is, my child is like, yeah, I'm not eating that. Right. And then the tears come, and then you create like the emotional trauma, and you're like, okay, my child's going to be in therapy over it, and then the end, and everything's ruined. Not really. I kid. A little bit. And so basically, I started making smoothies. Now, I'm not lying to them. If they ask me, they see me make the smoothie, there's vegetables in it. But I'm not pointing it out. Right. I'm like, okay, there's kale and spinach and broccoli in it. Usually, sometimes we put avocado. We do all of these different kinds of things. But then I mask it with a protein powder that's safe for kids. It's not like weird protein powder. It's like it has pea protein and stuff like that. That's what I call it. That is chocolatey. And sometimes I put honey in it, and sometimes I'll put a banana in it, and I'll put coconut water. Like, I'll choose different, obviously not all together because that would be like a lot of sugar, but like I'll choose different things to sweeten it so it tastes good. Yeah. And then my kids will eat it. And then I know that they had vegetables. What they need. Yeah. Exactly. But there is a little bit of tricking in it. Okay. I think it's okay. That one's okay. That being said, I do see at the same time, like, I want my kids to know that there are no monsters in the closet. Yeah. And I want them to know that eating green peas is not scary. And I really feel like, the pediatrician said to me, is Raphael fearful of other things in his life? And he probably is my child that is the most nervous of new things. And he'll say in a cute way, because we're such an open family. He'll be like, Mommy, I'm scared. Is it going to be scary? Is it going to be this? We went to Universal 2 years ago when we were in LA a different time. And Carmen was the kind of person that we brought her to Disney, and she would hug Mickey Mouse and was like so excited to like grill all the princesses and be like, Cinderella, why are you wearing this dress? And you should be wearing that dress. Where is Sleeping Beauty? They're like, she's sleeping. She's like, okay, I almost got you. So it's like she literally was such a different child. Whereas Rafa sees this guy, this giant minion character, and he just started shrieking. And he was like, this is so scary. And that's just kind of been him. He's been always like a little bit of an observer. Now he's getting much more open, and he's the kind of kid that goes into the playground and like goes and makes a lot of friends and stuff like that. But it's definitely been on his own pace. And he anyway, she asked me. We went to Universal this time around when I met you, and he was very nervous because he remembered, even from 2 years ago, he remembered. And he was so proud of himself that he overcame his fear. And so what the pediatrician was saying to me is that fear of food and fear of other things, it's all linked. Mm-hmm. So a child who will tend to be a picky eater is often afraid of other things as well, because it's sort of a fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown, of course. So, during me taking care of him as his mom is making sure that he's getting all the right things, but at the same time, pulling back the curtains and being like, it's actually not so scary. So that's, I think, very important in terms of not tricking them. Like, if you need to trick them to make sure that they're getting their basic nutrients, trick them. But the rest of the time, be like, okay, that's just a base. But now I'm going to still put the effort to do the sort of taste buds, Kalamata kitchen kind of thing of like, hey, let's try new stuff because it's fun.
It's fun, and, I think that Kalamata and al dente could go a long way to assuaging some fears that a kid might have. There's a comforting hand to hold that's walking you through these adventures, and Kalamata's ideas are really fun, and kids seem to have their own ideas after that. I mean, one of our goals is just to create a more curious, compassionate, and courageous generation of eaters. And through her adventures, I think that if they bond with the character, there's a really solid chance that they'll kind of internalize some of those characteristics from her and feel a little bit more courageous and inspired to take those adventures themselves.
Well, interesting what you're talking about with the characters is I'm not going to name the company, but I had a business meeting about a year or two ago with this company that does a lot of cartoons. And they were talking about how influential these cartoons are now. I mean, they used to, when people used to ask children, like a long time ago, they would ask children, who's the most influential person? They would say, like, my mom. And then they would say, like, maybe the president or, something like that. Then maybe, like, fourth on the list was, he laughed, it was like, the dad was then, which I was like, oh, God. I think it depends on family to family. But it was always, like, the mom first. And then, and then it went on and on and on. And now, if maybe mom is first, but it's also these different characters that people get into, whether it's Dora or it's Mickey Mouse or it's a princess or it's a, Paw Patrol or any of these things. That is so influential. And the president or, I don't know, Jesus or any of these things that used to be on people's list a really long time ago aren't on it anymore. And so you really have touched on something that's really important, is how much children are connecting with story characters. And because their imagination is so amazing right now, that they really make these story characters come alive.
Yeah, I mean, the characters exist for kids to love them. And at the end of the day, if they love them, as you said, they'll create their own. They have their such incredible imaginations right now. They'll create their own adventures with it. Food is just the medium that we've chosen to go with on these adventures, to go with Kalamata on these adventures. And the nice thing about that medium is that everybody has to eat.
Yeah,
and you have to do it multiple times a day.
Exactly.
So
And that's the interesting thing. I mean, for you guys at home or wherever you are listening to this podcast, I want you to think about. Are you somebody who has struggled with, because almost everybody has, do I know when I'm hungry? Do I know what I want to eat? Does that coincide with what I should be eating? And do I stop when I'm full? And do I feel good afterwards? All these very simple things that most of us as adults will pretend to know. You might not, but when the doors are closed, what's actually going on when we're eating, when we're alone, or when we're with people who are just extremely comfortable around and we can be vulnerable, or they don't even care, they're not paying attention, or whatever tricks you have. I mean, I remember when I was struggling a lot, nobody knew I had a problem. I would go and close the door and then I would fall apart. And it is this thing that drives me almost every single day of, I want my children to know these basic things. When am I hungry? What should I eat? And hopefully it should taste good, because it should be pleasure. Food is pleasure. And when should I stop? And really enjoying the experience, but putting it in the grand scheme of things, that I don't have to be obsessing about food all the time. And I think that it's something that very few of us actually figure out how to do. When I knew I wanted to be a parent one day. I definitely didn't know I wanted to have as many kids as I've had. But I would always say to myself, look, I need to fix this, because I know I want to be a mom one day, and I don't want to pass on my stuff to other people, to my babies. I want to make sure that this stops with me. And then my children can have their own journey. And I can, of course, have the wisdom and knowledge, along the way to help them. But I really want to make sure that I'm not putting my own shit on them. Yeah. And it really has been incredible to live in a way now where I can do those very simple things. They are so simple, but they're so difficult. So I mean, I think it's wonderful, going to a place of, children being able to be experimental and realize that food is fun, but then also putting it in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, it's not so easy to be introspective and thoughtful when you're an adult. I think you have so many other things going. We all have so many other things going on. It's very easy to. You're extremely thoughtful about what you're trying to feed your children. It's very easy to forget to be thoughtful about what you're feeding yourself, and to answer those questions truthfully and honestly to yourself. And I think this is also a way to get adults to think about their own issues, their own thoughts on food and feeding and eating and family time, in a way that they can do with their children. I mean, and imagine if you start that process young, if you get kids to be more thoughtful about what they consume, they'll naturally make better decisions as they get older. That's what all of us want for the next generation, whether you're a parent or not. It's the future is a lot brighter if kids are thoughtful about what they consume.